Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here. Today we're going to talk about some modern Doctor Who. And my question is, what is your favorite story from each series of modern Doctor Who? From 2020, from 2005 through 2024 when I am recording this. So we'll be counting season 1 as well. Not necessarily which story do you think is the objective best, but just which one is your personal favorite at the moment? Which story do you like the best from each season? Two-parters, of course, can be counted as one story. For Series 1, it's Dalek. I love Dalek. I think Dalek is one of the best Dalek stories ever made, arguably the best Dalek story ever made. It shows just how deadly one Dalek can be. Also, Christopher Eccleston's performance in this is just fantastic. Plus, I really like the guy playing Ben Staten as well. He comes across as being unlikable so well. I think it's a really, really good story. Series 2 is a tricky one because there are some good stories in that season. The Impossible Planet's a good two-parter. I also really like School Reunion a lot. It's so great having Elizabeth back as Sarah Jane, my favorite companion. The Girl in the Fireplace is a strong contender, too. I love The Girl in the Fireplace. That's just a fun watch for me. Plus, I love the incidental music from that episode. The one I would pick probably depends on my mood, but it probably comes down between School Reunion and The Girl in the Fireplace, and it's just the mood I'm in. It's hard for me to pick one or the other just off the top of my head. If I was to pick right now, I'd probably say School Reunion, but maybe The Girl in the Fireplace is really hard. Series 3 is really tough between Blink and Gridlock. I think I would personally give it to Gridlock. I love Gridlock. It's one of my favorite Modern Who stories. I think it's really strong. It's nice to have a little cameo by the Macra in there, even though that's the first time I ever saw the Macra. I'd never heard of the Macra back when Gridlock originally aired and had to get online and look that up because I figured it was referencing Classic Who. Because Macra just wasn't a story. I don't think Macra was really a story people knew about until the animation for Macra really started getting announced. I think it was just kind of one of those missing stories that never got talked about. But I like everything in it, especially the ending, the bit with the face of Bo, and then the conversation between Martha and the Doctor at the end really sells it on me, or sells it to me, for me, whatever. I like it. But of course, Blink has got to be in that conversation. I do love Blink a lot. I think Blink deserves all of the credit and accolades it gets. It's just a fun watch. And living proof that a Dr. Light episode can work. Not the only Dr. Light episode that's done that, but definitely probably the best one. Series 4 is a little trickier. Midnight is definitely in that running, which is not something I would have believed I could have heard myself saying 3 or 4 years ago. But my last rewatch of it, I really came to appreciate it more. It's just a well-made episode. Plus, it's got David Troughton in it. The Journey's End two-parter is also very good. A little overstuffed, perhaps, but it's a lot of fun. And those are kind of the main two I think of right now. It's hard kind of picking a favorite story from Modern Who without going and writing them down in my notepad like I do sometimes, doing it more off the cuff like this, because I have to try to remember all the stories. It's easier with Classic Who because you only have 6 or 7 stories, but you know, in Modern Who, when you've got like 13 stories you're trying to keep all straight, you're like but I think those are probably my two favorites right off the top of my head anyway. Series 5 is The 11th Hour. That one's easy for me. My favorite Matt Smith episode. I love The 11th Hour. I think it's objectively the best post-regeneration story we've ever had as well. Definitely wins for me. Series 6 is trickier. I'm not a big fan of Series 6. I do like the opening two-parter, though. The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. I love the resolution of the story and how they tie it in with the moon landing. And I think the Silents are a fascinating villain. I think the whole concept behind them is quite fascinating. So I would argue possibly that one, although The Doctor's Wife is also a really good episode. But I think I'd argue for the two-parter off the top of my head. Series 7, looking at them separately, because I tend to think of Series 7A and Series 7B as separate seasons, simply because they're so tonally different from each other. For Series 7A, my favorite would be A Town Called Mercy. I just think it's the strongest one of those 5 episodes. And for 7B, I would say Bells of St. John. That was a lot of fun for me. That's also, if I was ranking Series 7 overall and picking a favorite, I would pick Bells of St. John. That's just a fun episode. I like Bells of St. John a lot. It's always fun to listen to. Got some nice little incidental music. It has some clever things it does I like. It's probably my favorite of the series as a whole. Series 8 is definitely Mummy on the Orient Express. I love that episode. I love that episode so much. That's an episode I wish had been made in Classic Who, just so I could claim it for Classic Who. Modern Who has better episodes. I know, yeah, Classic Who has Mummy on the Orient Express. Yeah, that's an episode like I wish Classic Who could claim as one of its own. But it is. It's just one of those episodes that goes to show you that Modern Who at its best can make some of the best Doctor Who episodes of all time. It's so well done. Peter Capaldi is so good in that role. The cinematography is good. The concept of the story in general is good. The ticking clock is good. The resolution is good. It's such a well-made Doctor Who story. Now, Flatline also gets some credit. I got to give Flatline a shout-out. I like Flatline a lot. It's very, very good. I enjoy Time Heist. I think Deep Breath is good. Robots of Sherwood is fun as well. There are definitely some strong stories this series, but Mummy on the Orient Express is definitely up there as probably one of my favorite Doctor Who stories of all time, especially of the modern series. It's one of those rare occasions where I'm like, I wish the classic series had done this. Same thing kind of with Blink, actually, because the idea of the Angels is so clever, and you could have done something like the Angels on a Classic Who budget and probably made it work, that I'm like, I wish Classic Who would have thought of that idea. Series 9, not a series I'm overly fond of, but I would say Heaven Sent is my favorite, and I do count Heaven Sent as Hellbent separately. I don't count them as a two-parter. I count them separately, but Heaven Sent is definitely the strongest for me. I do have to give a shout out to the Under the Lake two-parter, though. I do think that one's really good, but Heaven Sent is just a masterclass of writing, directing, and acting with Peter Capaldi selling every second of it. It's just a phenomenal piece of Doctor Who. Series 10... I'm not really sure on Series 10 off the top of my head. I enjoy Smile well enough. Thin Ice. I would probably say Thin Ice, actually. I do love Thin Ice. I think the Dr. Falls two-parter is really good, and if you want to throw Twice Upon a Time into that, that's fine. I do kind of count those. Even though I rank them separately, I think I count them kind of together. Because I do like that. It's a good season finale. And Twice Upon a Time is a really good kind of epilogue for his Doctor. But Thin Ice I just love. I love Thin Ice so much. It's my second favorite Capaldi story after Heaven Sent. It's just so much fun. And the BBC just does period pieces so well. That episode, I always love going back to it. I truly do. Series 11, probably The Ghost Monument. I have 3 episodes I really like from Series 11. That's Demons of the Punjab, which I got to admit, it's just a very good story. Really feels like a First Doctor historical almost, more so than any historical post-First Doctor has. So it gets points for that. Kerblam is also really fun for me. I enjoy it. And then I like Ghost Monument a lot. And Ghost Monument's probably my favorite of the season. I just think it's fun. It does a lot of things I like. And I really like the guest cast in it a lot. The guest cast really sold me on this one. Series 12... It's hard for me to pick a favorite. Spyfall's good. The Tesla episode is really good. Fugitive of the Jadoon is good. Can You Hear Me is good. Haunting of Villa Diodati is good. That one would probably just depend on my mood. It's such a strong season. It really is. I mean, aside from the finale, which is hot garbage, it's a strong season. I would probably... Ooh, this one's hard. The Tesla episode's definitely in contention. Haunting of Villa Diodati is definitely in contention. But I don't know. I just really like Can You Hear Me a lot. Especially that ending with the Doctor thwarting them at the end. It's my favorite Whittaker moment. It's her best moment in the role for me. When she has that little showdown with them at the end. It's really good stuff. So that's a hard pick. That's a really hard pick there. Flux. Probably either episode 2 or episode 4. I'm not a big fan of Flux as a whole. Episode 2 and episode 4 would be great Doctor Who episodes as standalones if they didn't have the Flux crap tied up in them. Would be really good episodes. My favorite between them, I'd have to go back and rewatch them. I'm not a big fan of Flux. It's one of my least favorites of seasons of Doctor Who. But either episodes 2 or 4, Village of the Angels or War of the Centaurans. Hard for me to pick between them. And then I guess the 2009 specials, I didn't do that. The 2009 specials, my favorite's Planet of the Dead. I like Planet of the Dead a lot. Although Next Doctor and End of Time are close. They're really good. The 50th anniversary specials, it'd either be Night of the Doctor or Day of the Doctor. I like both, just depending on my mood. The Jodie Whittaker specials, Power of the Doctor. I love Power of the Doctor. That's probably my favorite Whittaker episode. I really like Power of the Doctor a lot. It's just it's like the modern Who version of the 5 Doctors. The plot might be a little thin, but it's just a celebration of everything Doctor Who up to that point. And it's there for the fans, and it's a lot of fun, and it puts a smile on my face. It really is the modern Who equivalent of the 5 Doctors, which is definitely a good comparison. And then the 60th anniversary specials, my favorite's probably Wild Blue Yonder, although I enjoyed all 3 to varying degrees, but my favorite was probably Wild Blue Yonder. And season 1, I should say. Season 1, my favorite was probably Dot and Bubble. I thought Dot and Bubble was really clever. More proof that a Dr. Light episode can work really well, because while the Doctor's in it, he's not in it a lot until the very end. But I think it's a very well written, very well executed, very clever episode that does political satire really well in a way I didn't think the 2020s could do. It's very clever with what it's trying to say and all of the points it's trying to make. It does it in a very, very good way. And then I also have to give a shout out to 73 Yards, another Dr. Light episode that is really good. Probably my second favorite of the season. Millie Gibson, my hat's off to have been 18 years old and to be pulling off a role like that and carrying the whole episode on her shoulders and just nailing it. I got to give my hats off to her as a performer. That is a fantastic piece of work. Very good episode. In a season that I like about half the episodes, because I thought Devil's Cord was good and I thought Boom was good. But yeah, Dot and Bubble's definitely my favorite of the season. So those are my favorite episodes from each season/series of modern Doctor Who. I want to know what you think of my list, and I want to know what your favorite story from each series is. Comment down below and let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button as well. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review. A link to my Amazon wish list is also down there as well. A link to my Amazon UK wish list is also down there. I have a P.O. box down there if there's anything you'd like to send me. A link to my Patreon, that's what I was about to talk about. A link to my Patreon is down there if you'd like to support me on that. Get early access to videos, bonus videos, exclusive videos, voting on Doctor Who things I do reviews for, stuff like that. I also want to give a shout out to a couple of my top tier patrons, Sam Venning and Colin Coney. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons and my YouTube members. Most importantly, thank you for watching.